Hello, everybody. Welcome to this May 2025 first edition of Old Scribes. Haven't seen my partner here, George Willis, in a little bit. Welcome back from a long cruise and
I'm back,
vacation.
baby. I'm back, ready to rock and roll.
All right, right.
Let's do
Uh,
this.
Good to see you. Um, and with us today, we have Jose Corpas, an author, historian, writer, kind of a jack of all trades. Recently won an award winner for his article for Mr. Beller's Neighborhood. Picked himself up a Boxing Writers Association, got him some hardware. Congratulations, Jose,
Thank
and
you.
welcome to the show.
Congratulations.
Thanks. Thank you,
Congratulations.
both of you. Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, so tell us a little bit about that story. I read it. It was really interesting. Tony Pallone, is it Pallone or Pallone?
Palone.
Pallone.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, where is that a story that you kind of wanted to that you had been wanting to write for some time?
No, it's a story that wanted me to write it for some time, right? It's just the other way around. I try to shy away from the spotlight, honestly, right? So Palone was a number one contender back in the 1940s, right? He was teenager. He was 17 years old, headlining at Madison Square Garden, right?
Wow.
St. Nicholas Arena, all of that. Um, the title was frozen still because of World War II.
Hmm.
So he was kind of at his peak at the wrong time because there was no title. And then when the title was unfrozen, a gentleman by the name of Sugar Ray Robinson won the title, and no, he was undefeated against welterweights, right? No welterweight ever beat Sugar Ray Robinson. So it's bad timing for my buddy Tony Pallone. But what happened was when I was a teenager in high school, I used to work out at a gym in Coney Island, and I used to do my road work on the boardwalk. And like if you ever seen the movie The Warriors, right on that strip. And I used to, when you're running, you're shadow boxing, right? You're throwing punches. And there was this old guy there that used to throw punches at me when I was running. And long story short, he's the one that called me over one time. Now, because of my father, though, I knew all the old time fighters, right? I had his old magazines. Um, he had a couple of old magazines, so I studied them. So I knew who Jimmy Carter was. I knew who Joe Brown was. I knew all these guys, even though I was a teenager. And this old guy is the one that steered me towards Tony Pallone. Then I met Tony Pallone, and I thought I was going to become, the next Sugar Ray Robinson. But it turns out Pallone was an interesting guy because not only was he a boxer, but he was managed by the Godfather, right, of the Genovese crime family, and he was also best friends with the Godfather that followed him, Vinny the Chin Gigante, right? So on the days when I'm hanging out with Pallone, and we actually hung out, we became friends. I'm meeting all these guys with names like vegetables and food, like Tommy Frankfurter, Jimmy Tomato, Johnny Sausage, right? And I'm learning things, man, and they're telling
Fugu.
me why so and so ended up in the trunk. Why? So in some ways, it ended up even being more interesting than if I had gone into fighting. Which I did have a couple of fights with him though in my corner. But fast forward now to 2012, the New York State Boxing Hall of Fame opened, and I kept watching them. I was like, I want to see when these guys put Pallone in, and they never put Pallone in. So I started harassing them with a bunch of emails. And eventually they asked me to join the committee, which was not my intention, right? But I joined the committee and I still had to wrestle with them to get Pallone in. It took like 2 years.
Mm.
And finally he got in. And I thought my job was done at the Hall of Fame. But no, Bobby Cassidy fell in love with the story. He wanted to turn it into a documentary. We're being contacted by someone that did some play in Manhattan. He thinks there's potential for a play there. And then I just decided to write that story for Mr. Bella's Neighborhood. It's not even a boxing website, Mr. Bella's Neighborhood. Right. So Bobby Cassidy Jr. thought that it should be documented. Now he has a very good throwback media website on YouTube, and he wants to document stories. A lot. like what the New York Public Library has with the slaves. With they have recordings of slaves. They have interviews.
Hmm.
So he wants to preserve something like that. So he's got a huge library of interviews with old fighters and or about old fighters.
Hmm.
And he thought it was pretty good with that. And then there were so many wrinkles to Pallone's story. I mean, this is a guy that used to hang out with Tony Bennett, with Joe DiMaggio, Abbott and Costello, right? Lou Costello. So he just decided there's too much material here for just a YouTube video, and he turned it into a documentary, and it played at both the Greenwich Village Film Festival and the Coney Island Film Festival, and it actually won first place at the Greenwich Village Film Festival a couple months ago.
That's awesome.
Yeah, it
That's
is.
awesome. Yeah,
He did
yeah, that's awesome.
slightly different versions though for
Hmm.
each film festival.
That's really
Yep.
good. I know Bobby from my days at
That's
Newsday, and
him.
of
That's the
course,
guy. Yeah,
yeah, being around the fight game a lot. That
yeah.
he was always around. He's very, big supporter of boxing. Big family, right? His family, his father fought, I believe, and
His father
some
was
other folks.
top
Yeah,
five contender in middleweight and light heavyweight.
right. Exactly.
Yeah,
Yeah. So
he
he's
would
a
have he would have been a
big
champion in
boxing guy.
today's era. With I don't know. I think I stepped on the championship belt on my way home.
Hmm.
That's how it is nowadays.
Hmm. So
Right.
Jose, where'd your writing background come from? I mean, you don't just pick up a pen and start writing about somebody unless you kind of feel it.
Honestly, I'm not like trained. I didn't go to school for it. And if I had to pinpoint what I first started writing with, I want to say it was love letters, right, to
Hmm.
my classmates.
Hmm.
And I remember catching myself sometimes like, whoa, I don't really feel this, right? But then I would send it anyway, and I used to get reactions from it. And I think that's the first time I started recognizing what the power of words were,
Hmm.
right? I,
Hmm.
I believe I got ADHD or something. It was never diagnosed, but I remember having a hard time focusing in school, and I
Hmm.
couldn't sit still, and I'm doodle daddling all over the place.
Hmm.
And I remember they used to give us assignments. Who's the guy with the twist endings? It's not Edgar Allan Poe, right? Who's the Oh, Henry, right? Oh, Henry has the twist endings, and
Okay.
right and I remember being in second grade and they would assign that, and I never read it. Right, I'm just sitting in the back hoping they don't pick on me trying to read it, and then when I'm listening to the answers, and everyone's saying what happened in the story, I was like, wow, I should have read that. And that's when I started forcing myself to read. But I have
Right.
to really force myself to read. And then I did
Hmm.
take some journalism courses when I finally got out of the army. And
Hmm.
I went in at a bad time because my professor, I stopped at an associate's. My professor was like, this is the wrong field. Very soon, there's not going to be any newspapers. Uh, yeah, that's what he was telling me. And I shouldn't have listened to him. I should have got the bachelor's
No,
degree.
man. No, 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 no.
Nah, but that's what I was listening to. So I never made a full time living as a writer. Yeah,
Well, hey, you never know, man, because I mean, you found an outlet to get your story presented that was kind of unconventional website. It wasn't a newspaper or a,
correct.
big popular magazine, but it got out there and it got
Yeah.
recognized, right?
Well, yeah, the BWAA gave it a second place.
Hmm.
Yeah.
And you've won many a BWA awards
Yeah.
in recent, right? I mean, over the years.
Over the years, I don't know. I'm at about 10 now, maybe,
Yeah,
including the honorable mentions. Yeah.
yeah, yeah.
Right. I ha-
First
I
place.
really enjoy your stuff. I know that
Thank you.
every time I read your stuff, there's always a little nugget or something that like I didn't know
Okay.
or is just really interesting. And I think I found that out. You wrote something on Salvador Sanchez, I think, correct?
Yeah, I did. That's a very strange death. Now I was led to believe that he was being chased.
Mm.
Oh, really?
Yeah, yeah, and there's other people who kind of believe that too. And a truck should not be going as fast as a speeding Porsche, right? So how's it getting
Mm.
rear-ended? I don't know. But whatever. The official story is the official story. But that's why I wrote that.
Mhm.
And
Yeah.
who
Talk,
did you?
talk, talk, talk a little bit about that because I know a lot of people don't remember even him as a fighter, and I kind of remember what happened with the tragedy, but not a lot about the specific details.
very unlike Sanchez to break camp, right? So, according to some of the witnesses, and one of the guys that is in his camp is still alive. He's in San Antonio, right? If you
Mhm.
go to one of the gyms there, oh man, I knew him when I was in the army. I went to Fort Sam Houston. I did my AIT training there, right, in San Antonio. And when we started getting weekend furloughs, the very first thing was I looked up the boxing gyms, and there was one gym called Zazamora, and I thought it was after Carlos Zarate, Alfonso Zamora, right? But it turns out that's the street's name, Zazamora. And I started going to that gym. So I met Tony Ayala, and I met this guy whose last name is Rosas.
Mhm.
And something was strange about Sanchez's behavior that day. It was like a different person. And he broke camp. And some say he went to look for women. Nobody really knows. He gave the excuse that he went to get some piece for his car. And then he came back middle of the night, like 3 a.m. And from the location where the accident happened, he would have been back well before anyone noticed he was gone. So there's
Mhm.
almost no reason to speed. Um, and then he got hit with a truck. So some people say he got hit rear-ended, and then the truck got sent into oncoming traffic. Right.
Mhm.
Other people say that he tried to overpass the car, miscalculated it, and hit an oncoming car. This is real strange though. The car was completely destroyed, and Juan Laporte, you know Juan Laporte, right? I know him pretty well,
Mhm.
and he went down there and he said that the coroner showed him or told him, maybe not told him because I think he was in the coffin already, but not showed him. I mean, told him that he was decapitated, right?
Mm. Mhm.
But then I see articles where it says that he was scalped, right? So it's um, lot of loose ends
Discrepancies.
there.
Right. Right.
Yeah,
Yeah, that did strike me too, just because, and also just the odd behavior. That's one thing, and I think I read it in your story, and then many others that it was very unlike him. He was being very kind of um, uh, distant and not
yeah,
talking
yeah,
and being kind of
yeah.
quiet,
Like something was
right?
up. Yeah,
Something was going on.
yeah.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Um,
Tragedy.
and then he was in training for the rematch with Laporte,
Right.
correct?
Yeah, yeah. Exactly. Yeah.
And
Then if you ever seen the Dina Tortons are those trucks. They move about as fast as a construction vehicle, right? So how's
okay,
Mhm.
I don't know how that rear-ended him. So something strange was going on. Either he wasn't going as fast as they say, or something else hit him before the Dean of Thornton. Whatever, something happened. I don't think we'll ever know. I hope he rests in peace. But it was a very very suspicious death.
yeah,
Yep.
yeah.
Wow.
Um, and then also you know Laporte very well, who is I also read your story on him, and I think it was he was just a real legend in your neighborhood, didn't he? He wrestled an animal or something, didn't he? What was it? I forgot what was in your story, but I think he was
Nah,
known.
he always walked around with snakes.
Yeah,
Yeah, he had them snakes, and they just died like about 5, 10 years ago. Well, maybe 10 years ago, because so he had them for a long time though. But he always liked those huge snakes,
Mhm.
and he thought it was funny, like to scare people with them.
but he was kind of a neighborhood legend, right? For his for things like that, and for just being a really tough guy.
No, he was a real great guy. He was probably just a legend to like sports fans,
Yeah.
right? Because
Mhm.
we had out of our neighborhood, we had John Candelaria and Juan Laporte that came out, right? And
Mhm.
we call him Tony actually, right? Because that's his middle name, Juan Antonio, right? But John Candelaria moved, right? So Juan Laporte was the only one that stayed in the neighborhood, and we got a taste of celebrity in our neighborhood. So I guess that kind of made him legendary. And I didn't see him every day, but he'd get visited, like by other fighters like Hector Camacho and all that stuff. So it was real cool to see somebody act that you see on TV, someone that you could probably idolize, but they're acting completely normal and they're treating you normal. So that was always real cool.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I remember Laporte. He was one of the first fighters that I almost went to go see. He fought Sanchez in my hometown of El Paso in
Oh
1980.
yeah, that's right. It was in El Paso.
Yeah, yeah, and
Yeah.
at the time, Laporte was not known. You know, he was kind of an unknown, at least in boxing as a whole. You know, and in that neck of the woods. And I remember people being a little surprised that he gave Sanchez such a good fight. And he did. He
Yeah.
gave a great fight.
No, they were even for about 8 rounds. Now we knew of him because he won the gloves and because he beat a contender named Fel Clemente.
Hmm.
But even still, we didn't think he was on Sanchez's level, though. We didn't.
Right.
And
Well,
and even Sal was like, "Yo, this is a great fighter here."
did he
Yep.
say that?
Yeah. He called him a future champ.
And he
Mm.
was.
A future champ. He called him. He didn't say that about Gomez, Danny Lopez, right? He only
Yeah.
said that about two guys, Laporte and Azuma Nelson.
Yeah.
Mm.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
So how did you talk about your? How did you become such a boxing guy?
I don't know. I guess it was just always around. See, my father was a big fan. He was always watching TV. I remember Ali Spinks being on. That's the first fight I ever paid attention to. The first fight, but I knew what boxing was. Strangely enough, so I must have been watching all the other fights. And my older brother was an amateur boxer too. He was in a couple of tournaments, so it just seemed as normal in our family as baseball is in other families. Right? It's just something we did.
Hmm.
Yep, even my
Mhm.
sisters were into it. My twin sister used to place bets like amongst family bets, and she was pretty good at it though. But she would
Yeah,
pick
man.
by looking at them. So she would like Ernie Shavers. He's gonna win. She picked Ernie Shavers over Ken Norton, right? So Jimmy Paul. She picked Jimmy Paul over Harry Arroyo and Robin Blake. So she had a good run for herself. Yeah, and she
Wow.
knew nothing about boxing. She just was going by like a hunch. Where did
That's.
where did George go? George disappeared on us.
I think he disappeared on us. He'll
Yeah.
come back. He must have hit his outlet or something. He'll be back in.
Okay.
Um. So your sister was pretty knowledgeable. Sounds like.
No, she was just a good guesser. She just went strictly on appearances, but she had a good record though of just picking fights. So I always had look. My father had magazines from like the '50s laying around, right?
Hmm.
And you remember back then we used to get monthlies. It was about 5 magazines every month, right? Right. World Boxing, Big Book,
Yep.
KO, Boxing Digest, International, Ring, Boxing Scene. But the magazines they used to take like 10 minutes to read. Remember, they weren't complicated to read, right?
Yeah.
No. So I kept wanting to read more, and that's when I started digging through my father's stuff. That's when I started digging through the encyclopedia. We used to have encyclopedias back then, and the B encyclopedia had a huge section on boxing, which I kept going through because they actually had the lineage of the champs. And then I went to the library, and luckily, New York's got some great libraries. So I started reading all those boxing books there, and they had Nat Fleischer's series, Black Dynamite. You couldn't take it home, but you could sit there and read it. So I started reading a lot of those. I just started reading everything. I was just interested in it. So
Yeah.
I'm in high school, and I already know about like the guys from the 1920s and all that. And I didn't even know I was preparing myself to be a historian. I was just super interested in it.
Um, yeah, I kind of started the same way with the
Mhm.
boxing magazines. I mean, the thing about those magazines is that, yeah, I would read it cover to cover in an hour,
In an
right?
hour, yeah, maybe
And
less.
but then you know what? The next day I'd read it from cover to cover again.
Yeah, but you might miss something, but I just kept craving new stuff, so I kept reading more and more. And then I started finding some of the best articles I started finding were guys that were not regular boxing writers, like AJ Liebling, Gay Talese. So I started seeking them out. And later years, I met Pete Hamill, who was a really great guy to know, right? Oh, George might know Pete Hamill. You probably cross paths with him, right?
Yeah, he's a legend.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
and he was a
Yeah.
big boxing fan. So and he used to live
Yeah.
by the library. You know where he lived, George, by Grand Army Plaza in Brooklyn.
Yeah. 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 Yeah.
Yeah, so I'd bump into him. He's walking in the park, and you'd just bump into him.
Yeah.
Yeah.
A lot of those old writers, they were all boxing writers too. They always
Yes.
covered the fights.
Yeah.
All those guys that worked for the Daily News and the Post, and
Yep.
it's amazing how big boxing was back in the
It
day,
used to
man.
be. Yeah.
Yeah.
They used to say, but there was a boxer in every family back then.
Right.
Yeah. So yeah, it was definitely a different sport.
Hmm.
So so let's turn our attention a little bit toward what's going on now. I don't know if Jose, did you have the chance to watch those terrible cards? Or were you anywhere near Times Square on Friday?
So when I went to the BWAA dinner, it was the Wednesday before,
Oh, that's right. Yeah.
right? So they already were building the ring there. The ring was up, and
Hmm.
I said, how are they going to get people in here, right? Because the section looked like it was maybe only like 15 feet wide,
Hmm.
Right.
right? So I had absolutely no interest to go, right? Because I couldn't see how you're going to be packed in there. Nah, to me, it was a BS card. There was a gimmick card. You had six good fighters, and they were all fighting the wrong people. They all should have been fighting different people. The Teo fight was okay, Teo Barbosa,
Yeah.
but I mean, these guys are walking into the arena in a taxi. It's just like
Yeah.
that's not boxing. I don't. I felt it was more of an exhibition, more of a flex. See, look what we can do. Right, I didn't think it was going to be real fights, and my instincts were right. They felt like sparring matches when I rewatched it.
Hmm.
Yeah,
Yeah, that's kind of what I thought too, and I think the fighters even felt like that. I'm not sure if maybe they just, they just weren't in the right frame of mind.
it was not about the fight. I think the fighters were disrespected in a way.
Yeah,
To be put in through that kind of situation, you wouldn't ask, uh, you know, uh, uh, um, I don't know, whatever, a circus clown. You wouldn't put him on the tightrope, right? That's not what he's supposed to do,
right.
right? So it was just very weird, that whole fight, that whole setup. Now they want to do one under the Brooklyn Bridge in July, which is, what are we doing? Yeah, what are we
Hmm.
doing? Just put on a fight, right? What do you
Hmm.
gotta have all these theatrics for?
Yeah, I know when they
Yeah,
talked about having it at Times Square, I visualized maybe the kind of New Year's Eve kind of setting they have
would have been a
with
mess.
the stage and the people, but they would have had to block off the streets.
What a mess.
Cops would have had overtime. You got
Yeah,
so much going
yeah.
on in the city nowadays. And kind of the way they presented it was like in this square tuna can little place where not many people actually watched the fight.
It
So,
was like, it looked like a schoolyard fight, right? This is little
uh,
guys fighting in the street. It's weird. I don't listen. They made their money. Good for them. I don't know what direction the game is going in, because that looks almost like freak show, almost,
yeah.
right? The whole environment around it.
100%, and it just
Yeah,
it just didn't. It didn't. It was. It looked cool in some
yeah.
pictures,
It sounds cool. Yeah,
and it sounds cool,
yeah,
but it just didn't. And plus, there were no. Obviously, it wasn't for fans because the fans weren't there, and the fans
yeah,
Right.
couldn't be real fans.
Mhm.
yeah. I don't know
So
what it was for. Yeah, it wasn't for the fans. It wasn't for the fighters. I don't know what it was. Some sort of statement that we don't know yet is being made there.
yeah, well, yeah, a statement of we
Yeah,
can sit down Times Square and
we
put a
can do
fight
whatever
there.
we want to do.
That's
Exactly.
how much
Yeah,
money we have. But
yeah.
if the point is to try to make the sport more appealing to people who don't typically watch it, they certainly did not do that. In
I don't
fact,
think so.
the opposite effect. I think they probably turned hardcore boxing fans like us and writers and professionals turned them off to it.
I don't understand it. To me, it feels like it was an exhibition.
Yeah, that's a good way
Yeah,
to
Mhm.
put
and
it.
I don't know. I don't make much of it. I don't care that who lost. Let them come back, right? Let Haney fight Ryan. I don't care. I don't even count what happened that night. That was just a demonstration, I believe.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Mhm.
and then the next night wasn't much better.
That one
Um,
I saw. I don't know what to tell you. I don't know what to tell you. I could have went 12 rounds with him if that's how they're gonna fight. You know, for real. Yeah, yeah. I just did
You know,
12 rounds with traffic. That was harder. Yeah.
Yeah.
here. Everybody's blaming this Skull guy who was absolutely terrible, right?
Mhm.
He was not a good fighter. And the fact that he had a belt tells you all you need to know about boxing today. But the thing that struck me is that as bad as this guy was, Canelo couldn't knock him out. Or it looked to me like he wasn't even trying to knock him out.
Mhm.
He wasn't cutting off the ring. He wasn't he wasn't being. You can't tell me that this guy's skull was so fleet that Canelo couldn't just cut off the ring and go after him. It just didn't
Mhm.
feel
I don't. I felt the same way with the Mugia and Belanga fights too.
really.
Yeah, man. I think he carried Mungia. Belanga might have been a little tougher than we thought, but you know, I don't know. I came from a different era. I've seen guys going for the knockout all 12 rounds. I've seen guys get cut, fight through cuts. I don't see that anymore. It looks like a very sanitized version of boxing sometimes.
Yeah,
These fights,
yeah,
when you grow
Yeah.
up watching, when you're training a couple of lockers away from guys like Juan Laporte, Iran Barkley, Mustafa Hamsho, and then you see these guys, and part of me thinks it has to do with the mitts, that pad work that they do. One,
yeah.
two, three, turn, 1, 2, 3. Back in the day, someone like Boom Boom Mancini, he didn't throw 1, 2, 3. He kept throwing boom, boom, boom until right,
Four,
yeah,
five, 6, 7, 8. Right.
whatever was opening, yeah. So Jeff Fennick was another guy, one of my favorites. Just ripped
Hmm.
right into you.
Ozzy.
These,
Yeah.
yeah. So these guys are fighting in spurts, and it's the new boxing, I guess. I don't want to knock them too much, which I guess it's better than ending up punchy, right? But it feels like a different sport. I don't know if it's age, but I don't get as excited as I used to with some of these fights. When's the last? Some of the fights are good though. Some like Connor and that what's his
Chris,
name?
yeah,
Chris. They put on a good fight. Some of the heavyweight fights were good with Dubois.
yep,
So it could still be a great sport, but too many fights look like they're just getting by.
yeah.
Just you
Yeah.
know.
And the UK. Sorry, I'm gone. Sorry about that. The UK fights are getting better than the American fights. It seems to me anyway. I mean, I guess I don't know if you call Canelo's fight an American fight. Not sure if you call it that, but uh, they've had some pretty good fights in the UK. But over in the US, you've got what we had this weekend. It was like overkill of the boring. And I mean, I read one stat where they total up the punches thrown in the Teofimo fight and Ryan and the Haney
Yeah,
fight and the Canelo fight, and it was 319. And they
crazy.
compared it to Amanda's fight with Katie Taylor when they threw 324. So their one fight outslugged all these other fights
You
combined.
can't you can't argue with those stats. Who's trying harder,
Right,
right?
right.
Right.
Nobody's getting knocked out. They're all going to 12 rounds, so that's no excuse
Hmm.
for throwing less punches. So who's trying harder? Who's
Hmm.
fighting their heart? There used to be a time when the old trainers used to tell you that if you weren't exhausted when the fight ended, you didn't give it your best.
Yeah,
Hmm.
Right?
yeah,
They
Hmm.
wanted you on E when that fight ended.
yeah.
Hmm.
Right,
Right?
Hmm.
Not You're
right.
not supposed to finish with 3/4 of tank of
Here,
gas.
here's a stat from CompuBox that I still find almost unbelievable. So it the Canelo and Skull combined to throw 445 punches, which is the fewest in 12 round fight history in CompuBox history.
Yeah, it's
So
embarrassing.
Canelo landed 5 of 13 punches per round to 5 of 24 for Skull.
That,
5
that's,
around.
that's a bad sparring match,
That's, I
right?
mean, and
Not a fight.
on top of that,
Yeah,
that plus the Ryan fight and the Haney fight, those 3 fights are in the top
yeah,
like 7 of the fewest punches ever thrown. So 3 of the weekend's fights are now history makers because of the lack of
yeah,
punches that they threw. I, I don't know. To me, that is just.
yeah. That's crazy.
I mean, there's
Yeah,
got to be something. To me, that speaks to something else going on. I don't
something's
know.
going on. Yeah, they're not real fights. That's what it sounds like to me.
Yeah.
They're demonstrations. We used to see it in karate when karate first started going into contact, and they would do the point karate. And you land a point, they broke up the fight. That was like one round. Then you land another point, and but the fighting stopped. Right, it wasn't like a continuous fighting. It was just like you land one punch. That's what it feels like to me when I'm watching it. And I like that karate. Like I used to watch Vic Moore. I used to watch those some of those Bruce Lee demonstrations. But you can't. It didn't feel like a real fight. These don't feel like real fights. Now, when they started getting into full contact, when they turned it into more of a kickboxing, like with Joe Louis, Peter Cunningham, right? Those guys ring bells to you. Um, oh, there was a
PKA.
Bill Wallace.
PK. Yeah.
Yeah. hmm
Yeah.
Anthony
But
Amp
that's
Elmore.
who?
Anthony Amp Elmore. He used to be a PKA fighter in
PK.
Memphis.
Yeah, so those look much more like fights than
hmm
points, and it's very similar. But the points, no one was really getting hurt. All right, you land a good punch, it might hurt the guy for a second. So that's why I say these fights feel more like demonstrations, exhibitions than actual fights. I
hmm
don't see anyone getting mad. I don't see anyone, trying to knock out the other guy. If it don't feel, they feel like nothing's on the line. There's
Yeah.
nothing, they don't right. So that's why I said it feels like exhibitions or demonstrations to me.
It almost looked to me in the Canelo fight in particular like it, there was a few like sequences where it felt like he was almost stopping himself from
Maybe,
going all out. You know what I mean?
maybe,
Where he was kind of doing like this little, where his instinct was to like step over and throw the hook to the body and
and
trap
then
him against the
right.
ropes. And instead, rather than doing that, he kind of shuffled a little bit and didn't do it. It
hmm
was awkward. I felt
Hey,
like.
there's a chance. There's a chance he might be slowing down. Also, that's possible.
Exactly. I
Yeah,
was going to say that. That could be
yeah.
Father Time.
Because
Could
that
be.
sounds like someone that can't pull the trigger. So maybe
hmm
But
hmm
but what about Skull? What's Skull's excuse though?
He's just terrible.
What's his? Well,
He was
I
terrible. I mean, everybody knew, and I always said this. Given the last 3 years of Canelo's career, that if Skull was any good, he certainly wouldn't be fighting Canelo before the Crawford fight or at all. Really,
okay, because there's no threat. Yeah, I mean, there's
he's no
too much
threat.
at stake. Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
and so now here we are. They're setting up the Crawford fight. It sounds like that's going to be on Netflix. So it's going to welcome a whole other level of. It's going to be a whole other level of attention. And I just wonder how good can this fight really be?
I would be very disappointed if in Crawford if he goes through the motions because he's one guy that really looks like
Yeah,
he's trying to beat people up. Right? He
hmm
comes from the old school type.
yeah,
And
hmm
Canelo has a little old school in him, but lately he looks like he's just more worried about performances than fighting.
yeah.
He's made a lot of money. He's made a lot of money. A
He's a
lot of
billion dollar
money.
industry. Yeah.
Yeah, he's made a
Yep.
lot of money.
Yep.
Well, I mean, I think they said the other day that he's. I guess Richard Schaefer. We all remember him.
Hmm.
Um, I guess he's his business manager now, and said that Canelo could possibly be the first $1 billion fighter.
They're probably going for it. That's probably what they're aiming for.
That's the goal. Pretty
Yeah.
sad. That's the goal.
Yep.
George, what did you think? I'm interested in what you thought of the Canelo fight in particular, and just the whole weekend.
Well, I think first of all, I think it was a little bit of overkill, a little bit of overreach when you're trying to have, three so-called big fights on one weekend. Cinco de Mayo was a date where you would point to one big fight in Vegas, whether it was Oscar fighting or, then Floyd and then Canelo, and there was always this big buildup. Now you've got it so fractured, and I think that this was a perfect example of it. You had all these fights going on, and it should have been a big thing for boxing. It should have been a great weekend, but it wasn't, because there was this planning of future fights, and I
Yeah.
think we just got to make sure we get a W and we emerge unscarred, and we can have the September fight and all these other fights down the road. And it just wasn't enough pressure on these fights in particular to make them good fights. They weren't a win or go home fights, and I think that's the way it basically played out. I think they can recover from it.
Yeah.
Teofimo, I think
Yeah.
he's going to be okay for his next fight. Canelo, obviously, there's going to be a lot of talk about the Crawford fight. Ryan Garcia, I don't know, maybe trying to figure out if the PED guy is his best guy, or can he even fight without the PED. So, I'm sure he'll get another shot. But overall, it was a big missed opportunity for boxing, I think. But I think there's been a lot of good fights that have been staged earlier in the year, and there's some big fights coming down the road. So I think the sport will recover.
Yeah. I agree. I don't want to beat up the weekend too much, but I hope that doesn't
Mm,
become a trend
Right.
where they
right.
keep doing stuff like that, because I don't think it's going to go anywhere. But yeah, hopefully we get some good fights. Makes something worth watching.
Mhm.
And maybe they'll be in actual arenas. Let's hope they do that.
You may be asking for too much there, because not even Saudi is looks like it's an arena.
Oh, that's
Mhm.
Yeah.
yeah. That looks it looks so boring every time I watch it. It's just there's no, and how can you? I mean, the fan bases are just not there, right?
Right.
Fan bases
Mhm.
aren't there. So I don't know how you can make that into
Mhm.
an exciting environment when it's just a bunch of people that may or may not be invested in this thing. You
Mhm.
know,
Yeah, but think, if you didn't see any of the other fights and you turned on and you watched the monster fight,
right?
then you're thinking, hey, what's everybody complaining about? That was a good fight. That was the old kind of fights that we like to see. So, maybe if you just saw that fight, then everything's good with the sport
Yeah.
nowadays.
But even I don't need to see knockdowns either. Like I could appreciate someone like Benitez or Pernell Whitaker, right?
Mm-hmm.
I could even appreciate Mayweather, right? When so it's not even like I don't want to see somebody go home with less brain cells. That's not what I'm asking for either. But I want to
Mm-hmm.
see skill versus skill and see who comes out on top, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's
Exactly.
yeah, that's the way I want to see it. Because even baseball, everyone loves a bunch of home runs, but a shutout or no hitter is just as exciting,
Right.
right?
Exactly.
So right, but when you're throwing underhand and these guys that I don't know, it just felt to me like the win didn't matter and the fight didn't
Mm-hmm.
matter. That's something we would have done like for kid gloves, right? For the what do you call it, the Empire State Games. They used to have
Mm-hmm.
them fighting like in the street in the park, right?
Mm-hmm.
What are we doing with? Why are we doing putting future Hall of Famers in gimmick fights, fighting on the sidewalk, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's to me that felt like an insult. That's not boxing, you know? Yeah, for real, they fighting on the sidewalk. That's
They
the next day when they took the clowns. I mean, when they took the ring down, it was
Mm-hmm.
like a guy painted in silver dancing. The naked cowboy goes there.
Like a
What are
cowboy,
we
right?
putting? Yeah, what are we putting Hall of Fame boxers on that same stage
on the sidewalk.
on the
Um,
sidewalk? Yeah,
Before we go, yeah, we do need to talk about. I spent the whole time complaining about the two fights, but yeah, the NOA fight was fantastic. Um, that Cardenas kid came
Yeah.
and gave him a real scare.
Yep.
Came to fight, and I actually had, after like the first 5 rounds, I had Cardenas up, pretty handily. He had knocked him down. I'd given him a couple of rounds. He looked really good, and but in a way, he's got that kind of generational punching power, and that kind of told the tale.
Yeah, he's a special fighter. I got to put him up there with the best I've ever seen. He's up there with the Arguellos and all of them guys.
Yeah.
I got to put him up there with him. He's proven himself.
Yeah. And go ahead, George.
Well, he got hit with that hook, and then he never got touched with that punch again the rest of the
You
fight.
noticed that? Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, never got touched with it the rest of the fight. Yeah.
And he was trying to hit him with that hook again. He was swinging for fences.
So that looked like two guys trying to win.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Yeah.
So that's the difference, though, and it's a big difference. I don't need to see blood, right?
Yeah.
Like one of my buddies is Vito Antuofermo, right? And Vito told me that in the fights where he bled is when the other corner insisted that Freddie Brown could not use his magic potions in the corner, right? But when they let Freddie Brown use whatever, he didn't bleed, right? So if you see the first Hagler fight, the Petronellis, they thought Hagler was going to win so easily, they didn't even bother. He had Freddie use whatever you want. So Vito said he had like 60 stitches that night, but you didn't see him bleeding in the ring because Freddie was using some magic potion to plug it up. And in the rematch, they made sure that they handcuffed Freddie Brown, and that's why Vito was pouring all over the place. So we don't have to see blood to see a good fight. We don't have to see guys get broken down. But I don't even know why I brought that up. I forgot where I was going with that. But there's a difference between seeing guys look like they're trying to win and with guys that look like when you finish a fight and you're like, he should have did this, he could have done that, he could have tried that, he should have tried that. Now I don't think we're seeing the best efforts.
Yeah.
Right? Like Cardenas looked like he tried every trick in his toolbox.
Yeah.
Right? He came, he tried, he gave it his best shot. I don't know if you could say that about Ryan Garcia. I don't know if you could say that about Barbosa, right? Yeah, exactly.
Well, here's the other, and this is weird. I got grilled on Twitter for this, or X, but I actually thought Garcia won.
Yeah, that's your opinion. That's all right.
I mean,
I don't think I would agree with that as much, though. But
I thought
you're picking from 5 punches around, though.
Right,
so
right.
Yeah. So how can anyone be that wrong? Right?
And the way I looked at it was, well, at least he was throwing a jab, right, and he was landing a jab, which to me was more than Romero was doing. Who was doing?
Yeah.
He knocked him down, and it seemed like from there neither guy did almost anything. So I guess he won it based on the knockdown. I mean, scoring wise, I just didn't. I didn't think Romero did enough to win. I thought everybody looked terrible.
When they're throwing that few punches, I put my scoring pen down. I was like, all right, you guys don't. It don't matter either. It don't matter to you. It don't matter to me. Right?
If y'all don't care, I don't need to care, right?
Imagine watching a basketball game and they're just passing the ball. They're not taking shots at the net. Are you trying to win? Is that how you train in the gym? Right? Just throw one punch? I don't know. I haven't been in the gym a couple of weeks.
Who knows, right? Maybe that is how they train.
I don't know. I don't know what's going on there. It didn't feel like a real fight to me, though.
Maybe they spend the rest
stuff. Yeah.
Maybe they spend the rest of their time on TikTok.
I grew up watching Marvin Johnson, Matthew Shah Muhammad, Dwight Powell. I know what a fight is. Right? If that was in the schoolyard after lunch break or after school, and they threw 2 punches, everyone would walk away. They were like, "All right, these guys, that's not a fight." It's true, right?
That is true.
Harsh on it.
Yeah,
that's very true.
That's very true.
See,
talking about you too.
Fights like that would be all right if they got right back and forth again next month or in July. Right? Those guys shouldn't be on the shelf for 6 months after fighting like that. They should be fighting again at the end of June, and then erase that from the memory.
On the undercard of something.
Whatever. Do what Chavez did. supposedly taxi, whatever. Chavez was staying busy throughout the year because he didn't want to go up and weight too much,
Yeah.
Hmm.
right?
Yeah.
So yeah, he was fighting guys that had no chance of beating him, but at least they were a little bit bigger than him or something. They would just,
Hmm.
but
I
he was
think
staying busy.
I think
That's-
Chavez stayed busy in these little fights in Mexico. That was his training, right? That
Yeah,
was
yeah,
that
it's part of the training. Yeah,
that was
keep
part
him
of the
sharp.
training, and
Yeah,
that's what he would implement, and that was the
yeah,
way he stayed sharp, and it showed. I
yeah,
mean, that's when you the more you fight, the better you get.
yeah,
So
Hmm.
yeah.
uh,
Fine
that's
tuned. Yep.
all right, Jose. Well, man, this was great. Appreciate you coming on, and I know you had to rush to get here, but hopefully it was worth it.
No, it was a lot of fun, man. I wish I was a little bit more prepared. Like, my arms falling asleep here holding the cell phone. But we got it. We got to talk. My next book is almost done. I'm
Okay.
3 chapters away from finishing it. Four belt era. ERROR.
Oh
Right.
wow. Okay. All right.
So I'm gonna talk about the belts. I'm gonna talk about why they exist, how they came into existence, and I can't beat them. I'm gonna join them. Right. I don't think they're going away. The
Right.
business
Mhm.
models look like they we may have 6 belts soon. Right. So what I did was, because I'm getting tired of these stats from like the zone and everything. First undisputed champ to do this, first guy to do. No, they're not the first, right?
Right.
Mhm.
So
Right.
I went back to day one and gave everyone 4 belts, and now history's changed now. So we're gonna see how. Now we could compare who beat the most champs. All right,
All
like
right.
who
I look forward to that.
yeah, it's
Yeah.
coming in a couple of weeks. It's just 3 more chapters. So now when you got 6 guys in the top 10 that are champs, now guess how many champs Sugar Ray Robinson beat, right? Guess how
Right.
many champs Harry Greb beat,
Yeah.
right?
Mhm.
Now you can't say, and I hate to say it, Matt, but your buddy Chavez doesn't have the record for most title fights anymore. And in the era, if we go with
Mhm.
4 belts way back, those guys fought too
Wow.
many times. They were fighting 150
Yeah.
fights,
Yeah.
100, 200
Mhm.
fights.
Oh,
Is
yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. I'm sure some of those guys made Chavez look, like
No, Chavez looks good. Chavez looks good. He's a 100 fight guy, right?
yeah.
He looks good, but some of these guys were unbelievable. You got a guy like Harry Greb, 300 fights,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Almost half of them are going to be title fights now, just
Mhm.
giving away a little bit,
Yeah.
you
Wow.
know. So,
Well,
so
when can we? When is that book expected to be out?
I'm hoping it's done by the end of this month. I'm trying to work on it every day. This only needs 3 chapters that I got to fine tune. Now it's a work of fiction though, so I don't want to get too crazy with trying to. I know it's not a reality, right? It's an alternate reality,
Hmm.
Mhm.
but it kind of gives us a glimpse of what it might have looked like, right? Had there been
Okay.
4 belts. So I
Gotcha.
think it's a useful tool because now you look at somebody like Kid Azteca a little bit differently, right? There's a
Yeah.
guy now. If we had 4 belts plus an occasional interim and a super and a regular, this is a guy
Mhm.
with 50 title fights now in 3 divisions. Yeah,
Wow.
exactly. So it changes things.
Yeah.
So at the same time as evening the playing field
Mhm.
between past and present, it also gives us an opportunity to put a little spotlight on some contenders that might have been forgotten, might not have been spoken
Mhm.
about. So now we look back at Quentin Romero Rojas, for example, and he's not just a name. Now he's the first Latino heavyweight champ, right?
Mhm.
And it's an excuse for me to put a little spotlight on some of these other guys and
Yeah.
tell the people of today, hey, listen, there were great fighters back then. They didn't need 16 belts, right?
Yeah.
Every 10 pounds. But
Mhm.
since you want to play this game where everyone's a champ, let's play it for the people in the past. And now we get to see who's who. And there's a couple guys that should probably be in the Hall of Fame now because they love putting the belts in the Hall of Fame. You're a 3 division champ,
Mhm.
you get in the Hall of
Right.
Fame, right?
Right.
Mhm.
Right.
So now there's a bunch of guys from the past now that should be getting in the Hall of Fame,
Mhm.
right? If we had the same belts, if we're using the
Yeah.
same criteria.
Yeah. Hey, man,
So
that sounds great.
yeah, I think it's a fun book. I don't know how many people will appreciate it, but I
Mhm.
think the ones that are interested in it are going to get a kick out of it.
Okay.
All right.
Look forward.
We will look forward to it. Make sure you you let us know, and when it comes out, and we will certainly
Absolutely.
get you some.
Absolutely. Yep.
All right,
Rock
man.
on.
All right, guys, man. Nice
All
All
talking
right,
right,
to you
Jose.
guys.
Jose.